Right into episode 1, automakers with the most recalls. So I think it's pretty important to talk about recalls because it is very much a misunderstood topic amongst journalists. I had to look long and far to actually find a properly done news article on this. So this is from Power Nation, powernationtv.com. I can't believe it. I went through, all the big legacy media news stories, the big legacy brands, and they're all talking just about simply, hey, these are your models, the most recalled, your manufacturers that have the most recalls, and that's it. That is so, in my opinion, unprofessional because the type of recall is critical. And then, not to mention, there's a whole other story, folks, that's called what did manufacturers not recall? And that's worse than what they did recall. And of course, we need to know what they actually did recall. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about what actually was recalled. So what are the numbers? How many recalls? How many people were affected? And very, very importantly, what were those recalls actually for? There's some very serious recalls, and there's some seriously not important, not to be worried over recalls. I can think of a few at Ford and Lincoln this year, recalls for chimes not being quite long enough from your door being open, for example, seatbelt chimes, that's minor. But then there's more serious recalls, such as fire. If the vehicle could catch on fire, that's a serious recall. But you've got all these big legacy, apparently professional journalists that do this full time, and they just don't care about actually informing us. What they care about is getting you to click on their article so that they can get paid and survive with the least amount of effort. And I find disgraceful because I'm a small family business. I already work 53 hours a week besides outside of this channel. And I think I managed to cover this in a much more professional manner thanks to Power Nation, the only website, and this isn't big legacy media, but this is the only website that it could actually find that did the job properly. Thankfully, I know enough about recalls and how they can be unbelievably important or unbelievably irrelevant so that I knew I needed to find this story. And it actually hits close to home. Because if you think about it, I own two Porsche 911s, a 1999 and a 2000. And that should go down in history as a reminder of how important it is to consider not just how many recalls and how many people are affected by recalls at a manufacturer, but more importantly, what about companies that aren't doing recalls? So 1999 Porsche, the Porsche 911 had a dual bearing IMS. The IMS was a dual bearing. So the IMS is the little piece going into the engine, controlling that camshaft movement. And apparently they've estimated it at having less than 1% failure. Well, what led to the failure? Well, the failure would actually lead to the engine essentially exploding from the inside, and you had a $25,000 repair on your hands. Now, Porsche didn't do a recall for the 1999, but they did in 2000 bring out a new, and this also affects the Porsche Boxsters. So in 2000, they come out with a single row bearing IMS. So the IMS went to a single row of bearings, and those bearings estimated at over 10% of the time would degrade, and then little shards of metal would cause the motor to explode. They never did a recall. We're 20 some years later, and there's still no recall. So the bigger story is about, as buyers, that need to watch our money more than ever. You go back to the 1950s, and the man of the household would be the only one usually working and would be able to easily provide for his whole family. When my friend was living out in Vancouver, on the island, there's a 3-story building now worth millions and millions of dollars, but the original The original owners were a grocery bagging man and a cashier. His wife was the cashier, so they both had jobs, not the best paying jobs, but back then you could be living in Vancouver in a 3-story with, not the highest paying jobs, but a grocery bagger and a cashier. Can you imagine that? So more than ever, it's important to watch our dollars. And remember, folks, when you have a recall, it might be a little annoying to bring your vehicle in. Sometimes there's no rush whatsoever, unless it could cause a fire, as we'll see with some of these brands. But if it's, let's say, your Ford Maverick and your airbag could overinflate by 11 millimeters, well, you probably don't have a whole lot to worry about, and you can just get it done at your next oil change. It's not the most pressing issue, likely. However, when you have some recalls on this list at certain manufacturers, that the airbag could send metal shards into your body, causing permanent injury or death, well, that's a different story. That's a very serious recall. So let's get right into this and look at the stats here. Okay, so we have Ford with 56 recalls for 2023. It's 5.9 million vehicles affected. They are number one. They have the most recalls, and it's not affecting the most people. Honda, 10th on the list, they have 6.3 million people affected but only 19 recalls. So they got put in the 10th position for most recalls because they're counting the number of recalls, not the number of people that affected. But Honda, it affected the most amount of people. Chrysler, you've got Chrysler here at 45 recalls. 2.7 million people affected. Mercedes-Benz, 31 recalls for the year. 478,173 people affected. BMW in fourth. So you've got BMW in fourth with 30 recalls, 332,954 people affected. General Motors in fifth position, 25 recalls, 2 million people affected. I think General Motors could maybe do with doing a few more recalls because they've got a bad air conditioning unit that can cause you to take the whole motor out of the engine bay. That's something worth keeping in mind. You've got Nissan, and that's just one example. You've got Nissan with 23 recalls affecting 1.8 million people. Kia in seventh position, 21 recalls, so with 3.1 million people affected. You've got Jaguar in eighth position, 21 recalls, 85,205 people affected. Of course, Jaguar sells so many less vehicles than Kia, Nissan, than really anyone above on this list. Volkswagen. Now, Volkswagen is one of the most sold brands in the world. 20 recalls, 452,762 people affected. I'm surprised it's that low, and it makes me wonder, should they have maybe done a few more recalls to provide a better service? Is this, for example, similar to the Porsche 911 and Porsche Boxster IMS story from the late 90s until the late 2000s? I don't know. I don't have any data to base it on because, of course, often requires a manufacturer coming out with the information themselves. And it's tough because if you come out with the information yourself, you get blasted by journalists. Journalists destroy big legacy media that just want clicks and dollars and money. They want their quick fix. They're like drug addicts. They're going to make a huge deal out of companies doing recalls. It's an easy story to cover. It's quick, it's fast, and it makes them money. Much more importantly, which they pretty much never cover, what are these recalls really about? How serious are they? So we can point out a few interesting things about this list. Ford with 56 recalls affecting 5.9 million people. That's almost roughly 3 million people less than in 2022. So Ford had made a promise to improve on the product, that they really want to cut down on recalls. And back when they made this announcement, Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford, made that announcement a while back in 22. I was really hoping that as time would progress, that it wouldn't be that they'd be calling less recalls but having just as many issues, but that there would be less issues. Now, a lot of these recalls throughout the year in 2023 at Ford, of the 56 recalls, I can say the vast majority weren't all that serious. They weren't life-threatening. They weren't fire-related. So that's actually really great. I'm surprised Chrysler, and really I should say, Ram. I'm surprised they haven't, completely recalled the transmission and differential, affecting hundreds and hundreds of thousands of truck owners every year. But maybe that's more personal opinion. I don't have any data on that. I just hear, same thing with Jeep. I hear a lot of complaints in the transmission department coming out of Ram 1500s and out of Jeeps. And frame complaints coming out of the Ram 2500, 3500 and beyond. Lots of frame complaints and enough photo evidence on the internet to say we should question that. I don't know how I'd feel about going heavy in a box on a Ram. And actually this year my dealership took 2 Ram 1500s on trade that actually had the frame coming to sink in. Now you can visually check it. Save money if you want to buy a Ram, great, but inspect it. Bring a tape measure and make sure that the top of the box and the bottom of the box, measure it. Measure between the cabin, the bed. Truck cabin is where, the family sits. And the bed is the bed where you put stuff in. Keep in mind, always look at your payload. Payloads, how much you're legally allowed to add on total weight onto the truck. Classic Rams are inexpensive, but they've got low payload. And you got to think about how much weight you're going to be putting in there. Now, this article, Power Nation, this company did a great job. They actually covered what these were mostly about. So Ford recalled, let's get into that. Ford recalled over 870,000 newer F-150 pickup trucks in the US due to faulty electric parking brakes. So faulty electric parking brakes. Doesn't mean the vehicle is gonna just roll away, because of course they're all automatic. As being all automatic transmissions, you have to put it in park before walking away. This is the electric parking brakes. So that's your essentially hand brake. Now, Ford also recalled over 238,000 Explorers because the rear axle mounting bolt on some models could potentially fracture, causing the drive shaft to disconnect. That's serious. If that happens when you're driving at highway speeds, you've got a dangerous situation. So that's one recall that's actually serious. Now you've got 341,000 Ram diesel trucks that were recalled due to an electrical connector issue that could overheat, resulting in potential fires. This is unbelievably serious, folks. One owner stated that his Ram truck caught on fire after the engine was turned off. Ram informed affected owners to keep their trucks parked outside until the repairs were made. That is unbelievably serious, folks. And it's sad that big legacy media only talked about, quick list, 2 paragraphs on who are the most recalled, didn't talk about what those recalls were. Power Nation, good work, good, excellent work on your part. Ram also issued a do not drive order for older pickup trucks equipped with Takata airbags. 132,000 Jeep Cherokees were recalled over similar potential fire-related issues. So very serious, and that's, I worry also about the Jeep and Ram transmissions. BMW sent out recalls for a small number of SUVs because the driver's airbag inflators would blow apart in a crash, causing shards of metal to eject and potentially injure or kill drivers and passengers. Folks, that is unbelievably serious. How did legacy media not properly cover this? This is must know for car shoppers car buyers like you and I. I've had well over 70 vehicles. I'm a big time car buyer. I've never been in an accident except one time at a red light. Someone drove into the back of my vehicle. But if ever, that means maybe I'm due. So I definitely want safe vehicles. Yes, I am on X, technically, but I don't go that often. Thank you very much for the question, Highlander Ridgeview. Thank you for posting it back up, so I had a more than one chance to pick up on the question. Of course, it's a little harder. Marie now is taking care of our daughter, our baby. She's still young, just about almost 2 months old, and as such, she's not here to cover and watch what's going on in the chat. I'll do my best. Nissan recalled over 463,000 older vehicles because the emblem on the steering wheel could come loose and injure the driver when the airbag is deployed. Again, serious. A majority of these vehicles were Frontier small pickups, larger Titan pickups, Xterra Pathfinder SUVs, and Armada SUV model years 2008 to 2011. Now, Nissan also recalled over 809,000 Rogues. Not a fan of the Rogue, folks. And Rogue Sports, model years 2017 through 2022, over a key related problem that could cause the ignition to shut off mid-drive. That is unbelievably serious. That could cause a serious injury or death because ignition shutting off when you're driving, mid-drive, means while you are driving, can definitely cause a very severe accident. Hyundai and Kia told 92,000 U.S. owners to park their vehicles outside because of an electronic controller in the oil pump that could overheat and potentially cause fires. Again, a very serious issue. Legacy media missed it like they miss a lot of things. Almost as if legacy media is paid by sponsors and told what to talk about and what to write about by their owners, because almost all legacy media has the same owners, and it's the same group of three that own 88% of the S&P, and that's State Street, BlackRock, and Vanguard. They own 88% of the S&P. So when they've got an agenda that they want to push, a woke, super end of the world climate agenda, both a woke agenda and a climate agenda, well, then you get all these companies following along, the media and all the companies that they own, and they're on record. They've been filmed for saying that they tell CEOs to follow the policies in regards to essentially what it can easily be described as a woke agenda. Which woke I found incredible. That's an acronym for willingly overlooking known evil. So woke, willingly overlooking known evil. Very interesting, but we'll keep this for the rant. Now, Jaguar also released a recall for 6,000 electric SUVs. This is very serious. Fire-related issue. Specifically, its high-voltage battery could potentially ignite and catch fire. And battery fires are very serious. Everything within a close vicinity will burn, and it is very difficult to put out battery fires. Lithium ion, essentially water feeds lithium ion fires. So if you really your battery casing, if ever your battery gets punctured and water gets into that battery, you've got a fire. So if you try to put it out with water, that's not the solution. You're just feeding the fire. Now, Volkswagen released a recall on over 143,000 vehicles. Their 2018 to 21 Atlas, as well as the 2020 Atlas Cross Sports, over faulty occupant detection systems in the front passenger seat. That does not sound very serious at all. Would not worry about it. I like Volkswagens, especially ones that hold their value well. So not the Jetta, but the Golf. The Atlas holds its value pretty decently as well, and it's a good-looking vehicle. Now, Honda released a recall on several 100,000 new 23 and 24 Accord and HRV, that's their SUV, their small SUV, the HRV vehicles, due to a missing part in the front seatbelt pre-tensioners. This could increase the risk of injury in the event of a crash. So that also sounds kind of serious. How this hasn't properly been covered by legacy media just feeds into my whole notion that we need to question everything, folks, and we also need to do our best to try to hold on to whatever liberty we still have. Well, you can do that by watching this show, staying informed, And we're a small family business, folks, so please think about hitting that thumbs up button. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. Think about hitting the subscribe button if you think that you would like to hear more about this type of automobile information. You're allowed to not like my rants. They're at the end of the show. You can just avoid them altogether. But we do important news coverage on the auto world, the automobile world, auto manufacturers, various brands. We cover the most important topics. So subscribe, hit that bell notification to not miss out. Now, I really like the next topic here. The next topic is near and dear to me because it's going to make my life less boring. A lot of you are Ford fans, and if you are and you're watching, your life's going to get less boring. So let's cover how Ford is going to be